So I would now request Sanjay to provide a quick view on what would be the Indian industry's response to this.
Okay, thanks for that, Rahul. Thanks to Isa for having me here, and thanks for being a great audience. Let me just quickly summarize. And my task is far easier now because a lot of things that Pratap said and Rajan said actually ties in beautifully with what I think as an industry rep we need. I've been fortunate to have been on both sides of the fence, so I can get a feel for what each side is looking for. And if I boil them down to just 4 or 5 main things that I think we need to focus on as a community, one side industry and one side, let's say, the internal security community, which would help the both sides. It's not just an industry perspective. I truly believe it's going to help both sides to fulfill their missions. You see, from an industry perspective, and earlier in the day we heard about the challenges industry faces. When you play in defense area, it's a very iffy game. It's project based. It's binary. You win it or you don't win it. You've invested money. You've burnt a lot of funds. You don't know if it's going to materialize. How do you hedge your business? And to me, if I was running an industry, the way I would hedge my business is to spread my risk. Using the same technologies, how do I spread it? A classical case would be, instead of looking at project-based defense industry, you look at civil aviation, which tends to be more serial production. To me, internal security requirements are close to that. The reason is, unlike defense, and we spoke about that, this is far more dispersed. Out of 28 states and that many number of central federal agencies, you have a better chance of selling into some of them instead of a big bang success or failure for the defense. So playing in the internal security supply area is a very natural hedge for Indian industry, as long as the same technologies and products they're talking of. The first thing I think that would help industry and the government to work together is a very clear statement of intent. Now, of course, at an internal level, it would mean even a doctrine that spells out what is our policy on internal security. For a minute, let me park that. As an industry, our interest would be more on what is a 10-year walk. What is a 10-year walk on coastal security? So in the first year, we're going to have coastal radars, and then we're going to step up our Coast Guard, and then we're going to have the satellite information overlaid on transponder details, etc., etc., etc. Eventually, we want to go into full-fledged. This walk is very important, because if industry has to invest and get ready for those requirements, it's got to be beyond just a tender-based response. That is too close to the business. So a broader perspective, both on technology and on investment, on the framework of security. What do states want to do? What do federal agencies want to do? Just pick a few of them. Let me name, I spoke of coastal security, and I think it's a hot area, as both the speakers before me said. But you must have read a few months back, there was talk about border fencing. 2,500 kilometers of border to be fenced, multiplied by that many thousands of dollars per kilometer, that is fencing, sensors, all-weather cameras, all going back into a command center. That's millions of dollars of projects. So if we name out a few of these large projects, and we can see them going out into the next half decade, 1 decade, then it's easier for industry to work. So I would call that as a roadmap for the future of investment in internal security. Second, you have guessed by now that internal security is a very dispersed field. There is no one Ministry of Defense. There is, of course, the Home Ministry, but under that there are so many bodies, okay? And each one of them tends to operate fairly independently. So in a perfect world, I almost think, should we have a unification of command? Should there be a chief of internal security? That being a political minefield, I'll park that. Let me talk about requirements. Is there a way that the states and the central armed police forces could unify their requirements? Now, all the requirements are not unique, are not combined. Jungle warfare had its unique requirements, as Rajan said. Coastal security has its unique requirements. But to the largest extent, if as an industry we could understand that here are the uniform requirements, this is the standard sidearm, this is the standard carbine, this is the standard, you understand? Crowd control mechanism we're going to use, equipment, then it becomes that much easier for our industry to cope with that. There are volumes, there is unification, and if you sell into one, then you know for sure that the remaining 27 states can use that. That would greatly help industry. Third, collaboration, communication, and what I would call as inclusion. Now, this is equally required within the state and the central forces. I mean, you just take coastal security, for example. There is inland police, there's coastal police, there's Coast Guard, and there's Indian Navy. There's that many bodies that have to talk to each other. And by the way, there are two more ministries who are involved with the coast who have nothing to do with security, which is Ministry of Shipping and Ministry of Fisheries. So you actually are talking of 6 government bodies who are dealing with the coast in some manner. Unification or better communication would help for sure. More importantly for industry inclusion, and I think both the speakers mentioned that, how early on in the requirement planning game can industry be invited on board? So recently you would have heard about the Indian Army did this. They invited a core set of Indian industries to one of their armored centers and said, you know, touch, feel, experience what our armored carriers are like, what our tanks are like, what are our pain areas when we deal with armored equipment. Something like that also needs to be done here so that industry can get included early in the game. As a matter of fact, industry can then help to fine-tune the requirements, the technical requirements. We don't have to adopt everything globally. We can design our own. But it's important to understand what India really needs. The last point, of course, is about technology adoption and upgradation. Rajan stressed this repeatedly. We are operating at, let's say, 150 police force to 100,000 public. If we take it up to double that to meet global standards, it means our standing force of 3 million, 30 lakh people would go on, right? It would double. So anything we can do, and there are so many examples he quoted, and that's where I think we can truly make a difference as industry. Using technology as a leverage, as an accelerator, to multiply the effectiveness of the security personnel. With that, thank you so much.
Thank you.